What did you just buy? Victor's voice shattered the library silence, hoarse and trembling as he stared at the glowing transaction on his phone, tears already carving tracks down his face. He was slumped against the low bookshelf, receipts scattered around him like fallen leaves, his broad shoulders shaking with sobs he couldn't hold back. Lila stood frozen in the children's aisle, Riley peeking out from behind her new pink parka, eyes wide at the grown man coming apart in front of them. Victor's finger hovered over the screen, scrolling through line after line, yarn for scarves to give away, donations to strangers' gardens, money for animals, for chemo, for every broken thing in the world except herself. His breath hitched, a raw, gutted sound escaping as fresh tears spilled. You had unlimited, he whispered, voice cracking completely. You had everything for one day, and you bought hope for everyone else. Riley's tiny hand tugged Lila's sleeve. Mama, why is the man crying so hard? Lila couldn't speak. Victor lifted his head, eyes red and ruined, looking at her like she'd just rewritten the rules of the universe. And in that quiet corner of picture books and bean bags, no one yet realized that what this homeless mother bought with a billionaire's fortune had just left him in tears he would never recover from. Before we continue, I want to speak to you for a moment. If stories like this remind you that kindness still exists, if they make you feel something real in a world that's getting louder and colder, then I'd love to have you here with us. This channel isn't just videos, it's a tiny corner of the internet where good people come together. Where we believe in second chances, in hope, and in humanity. And right now you're early. You're part of the very first people building this family with me. So if you want to grow with us, if you want more stories that touch your heart, go ahead and subscribe. It's free, it supports the channel more than you know. And it tells me that there are still people out there who believe in kindness just as much as I do. If you have subscribed to this channel, I can officially say welcome to the family. The rain came down in sheets that foggy September afternoon in Missoula, Montana, turning the streets into mirrored rivers and the Clark Fork into a swollen, angry rush. Victor Langston pulled his wool collar up against the chill, boots splashing through puddles as he cut across downtown toward the Missoula Public Library. He wasn't here for books. He had a keynote to deliver in less than an hour at the Montana Mining Conference. Something about sustainable extraction in the new era, words that felt hollow even as he rehearsed them in his head. Truth was, Victor had lost faith in people a long time ago. At 51, he built Langston Mining Tech into a $14.2 billion empire by seeing the worst in everyone first. Partners who smiled while sharpening knives. Executives who leaked bids for a bigger paycheck. Even his own grandfather, Harlan Langston, the hard-drinking prospector who'd struck copper in Butte and died bitter, had drilled it into him. Son, the second you hand someone down on their luck a lifeline, they'll use it to hang you with it. Victor had lived by that rule. His donations went through foundations, lawyers, and tax strategies. Never direct. Never personal. Never without armor. So why the hell was he ducking into a public library on a rainy Thursday? Because the conference hotel was packed with glad-handing investors, and he needed 10 minutes of quiet before stepping on stage to pretend he still believed in anything. The library was warm, smelling of old paper and fresh coffee from the little cafe nook. Students from the University of Montana hunched over laptops. A few locals sheltered from the storm. Victor wandered toward the back, past the Montana history section, tablet in hand, pretending to browse while his mind ran merger numbers. That's when he heard her. A soft voice, patient and warm, reading aloud from a picture book about wolves and moose. He glanced over a shelf and saw them in the children's area. A woman in her mid-30s kneeling on the colorful rug, pointing at illustrations for a little girl with pigtails and a sweater 2 sizes too small. The mom's coat was damp, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. But her voice never wavered. She made the animals come alive, made the little girl laugh even as they shared a single granola bar like it was a feast. No toys. No phone. Just a battered tote bag, taped shoes, and a library card sticking out of her pocket. Victor should have walked away. Instead he watched. The girl, Riley, he'd soon learn, traced a moose with her finger and asked if they really lived near rivers. The mom, Lila, answered like it was the most important question in the world. No performance. No pleading eyes scanning for sympathy. Just a mother doing what mothers do, shielding her child from the cold any way she could. Victor's chest tightened. He knew the stats. Missoula's housing costs had skyrocketed with the tech and tourism boom. Good people got pushed out. Teachers, nurses, aides, folks who kept the town running, ended up couch surfing, car camping, or worse. Lila looked like one of them. Clean but worn. Proud but tired. 6 months on the edge, maybe more. His grandfather's voice snarled in his head. Asterisk, walk away, boy. Sob stories are bait. Asterisk. But Victor didn't walk. He stepped into the children's section instead. Excuse me, he said, voice low so he wouldn't startle them. That's a great book. My grandkids love the wolf section. Lila looked up, instantly protective, shifting to block Riley from view. But her eyes weren't calculating. Just wary. We're just passing time. Rain's pretty bad. Victor crouched to Riley's level, offering a small smile. Hey there. You like wolves? Riley nodded shyly, clutching the book. They howl at the moon. Smart kid, he said, meaning it. He stood, meeting Lila's gaze. How long have you two been out here? Her chin lifted, pride flaring. 6 months. I was a teacher aide at Hellgate Elementary. Budget cuts. Trailer got foreclosed after my ex left. We stay at the Poverello when there's space. Library during the day. Montana winters don't wait for anyone. 6 months. A 5-year-old sleeping in shelters or a car while snow piled up outside. Victor felt something crack inside him, small but undeniable. Before logic could stop him, he reached into his coat, pulled out his wallet, and slid the matte black card across the beanbag between them. Lila stared at it like it might explode. Take it, Victor said quietly. 24 hours. No limit. Get warm clothes, a hotel room, food, whatever you and your girl need. Her eyes widened in disbelief. This is a joke, right? Or some kind of scam? No scam, he said. Call it an experiment. My grandfather swore people in your position would take everything and run. I want to know if he was right or wrong. He stood before she could refuse. Meet me back here tomorrow morning. Same spot. Then he walked out into the rain, heart pounding harder than it had in years. That night, in his riverside lodge with its vaulted ceilings and reclaimed timber, Victor couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire, phone in hand, watching the transaction alerts like a man waiting for a verdict. Nothing at first. Midnight passed. 2 a.m. Still nothing. Then just before dawn the first pings hit. $28.63 at the 24-hour Walmart on Reserve Street. Then $47.91. Same location. Victor's breath caught. Small amounts. Not the reckless spree he'd half expected. By morning, 2 more alerts glowed on his screen. $93.27 at a downtown bookstore. And another Walmart charge, clearly for Riley. He stared at the numbers, something uneasy stirring in his gut. No hotel. No big splurge. Just kid stuff. As the rain finally eased and Missoula woke up under gray skies, Victor grabbed his keys and headed back to the library. He had to see the receipts. He had to know what Lila Hartley had done with a billionaire's unlimited fortune. And deep down, part of him was already terrified she might prove his grandfather wrong. The sky over Missoula was still bruised with night when Victor pulled his Jeep into the empty library parking lot, wipers swiping at the last of the drizzle. He hadn't slept. The fire in his lodge had burned down to embers hours ago, but the transaction alerts kept coming, small, deliberate, maddeningly modest. No jewelry. No cash advances. No disappearing act. Just choices. He sat in the driver's seat a long minute, staring at the glowing screen. Walmart. A bookstore. A pharmacy. An animal shelter. His grandfather's voice growled in his ear. Asterisk, she's playing you, boy. Setting up the big ask tomorrow. Asterisk, but the numbers didn't lie. They were too careful. Too thoughtful. Victor grabbed his coat and stepped into the cold, boots crunching on wet gravel. The library doors weren't even unlocked yet, but he could see them through the glass. Lila and Riley curled up on the same colorful rug in the children's section. A new pink parka draped over the little girl like a blanket. Riley was coloring with fresh crayons. Lila sat watching her, exhaustion carved deeper into her face than yesterday, but her eyes soft and fierce all at once. When the staff let him in early, recognizing the man who'd quietly funded half their new STEM wing last year, he walked straight to them. Lila stood immediately, protective, the black card already in her outstretched hand. I was gonna give it back first thing, she said quickly, voice low so she wouldn't wake Riley fully. I didn't go crazy. I swear. Victor didn't take the card. Show me the receipts. All of them. She hesitated, then pulled a neat folder of printouts and phone screenshots from her tote, organized, annotated in small careful handwriting. She kept every one. He sat on the edge of a bean bag, spreading them across the low table like evidence. First page, Walmart. Kid-sized parka. Waterproof mittens. Insulated boots. Thermal layers. A backpack loaded with notebooks, pencils, glue sticks. School supplies for a kindergartner who hadn't seen a classroom in months. Not one adult item. Not even socks for herself. Victor's throat tightened. He flipped to the next. Downtown bookstore. A stack of children's books. Montana wildlife guides, native stories from the Salish people, a beginner chapter series about a girl explorer in the Rockies. He looked up. You bought books. Riley loves stories, Lila said quietly. Keeps her mind off everything. And when we get a place again, she'll be ready for school. No gaps. No gaps. Victor swallowed hard and moved to the pharmacy printout. Children's vitamins. Allergy meds. Band-Aids. And then, listed plain as day, prenatal vitamins. A full 3-month supply. He froze. The word stuck. He looked at her midsection. No visible bump yet, just the slightest softness under her worn sweater. You're pregnant. Lila's hand moved instinctively to her stomach, then dropped, ashamed. Early. About 10 weeks. I didn't want to say anything yesterday. Didn't want pity. Or for you to think I was working an angle. Victor stared at the receipt, then at her. A woman 6 months homeless, sleeping in shelters or library corners, carrying a second child, and the first thing she buys with unlimited money is vitamins for the baby she's barely keeping fed. His eyes burned. He flipped to the next page before she could see. A single charge, $500 to the Missoula Humane Society. Victor's voice came out rough. Why the animal shelter? Lila's gaze dropped to Riley, who was now half awake, coloring a wolf purple. Her own eyes glistened. We had a dog, she said, barely above a whisper. Buddy. He was Riley's best friend. When we lost the trailer, we couldn't keep him. Had to rehome him. Broke her heart. Broke mine. She took a shaky breath. That shelter helps families in crisis keep their pets. Food, vet care, boarding when they're between homes. I thought, if I had the chance, even for one day, I could help someone else hold on to that little piece of joy. So they don't have to say goodbye like we did. Victor couldn't speak. He looked at the little girl coloring happily in her brand new parka, at the mother who'd spent a billionaire's money on boots for cold feet, books for young dreams, vitamins for an unborn child, and kindness for strangers' pets. Not $1 on a motel room. Not $1 on a bus ticket out. Not $1 for herself. The receipts blurred. A tear slipped down his cheek, then another. He didn't bother wiping them away. Lila noticed, alarm flashing across her face. I'm sorry, did I do it wrong? I can pay you back somehow. No, Victor rasped, voice breaking completely. He pressed the receipts to his chest like they were the most valuable thing he'd ever held. You didn't do anything wrong. Riley sat up fully now, rubbing her eyes. Mama, why's the man sad? Victor looked at Lila, at the quiet strength in her tired eyes, at the way she'd chosen hope over escape, love over survival, and something inside him that had been frozen for decades shattered wide open. He stood, legs unsteady, and held out his hand, not for the card but for her. Come with me, he said, tears still falling. Both of you. Right now. Lila hesitated, fear and confusion warring on her face. Where? Somewhere warm, Victor answered, voice thick. Somewhere safe. You're done hiding in libraries. He didn't wait for doubt. He scooped up Riley's crayons, Lila's tote, the precious new books. And as the three of them walked out into the pale Montana sunrise, Victor Langston knew one thing for certain. The test hadn't been for Lila. It had been for him. And he had just failed it beautifully. The Doubletree suite overlooking the Clark Fork River felt like another world. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, glinting off the water and the snow-dusted peaks beyond. Riley let out a squeal the moment Victor swiped the keycard, her little boots pattering across polished hardwood as she discovered the loft bed, the massive bathtub, the bowl of fresh apples on the counter. Mama. There's a TV bigger than our old trailer. She bounced on the king bed, giggling like she'd stepped into a fairy tale. Lila stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, eyes wide and glassy. She hadn't moved past the threshold yet, like crossing it might make the whole thing vanish. Victor set down the tote bag and Riley's new books gently. "It's yours for as long as you need," he said quietly. "No strings." Lila finally stepped inside, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Her voice came out small. "I still don't understand why you're doing this." Victor didn't have a clean answer. Not yet. He ordered room service, chicken nuggets and mac and cheese for Riley, grilled salmon and salad for Lila, hot cocoa all around. While they waited, Riley claimed the coffee table as her art station, spreading out crayons and paper, humming happily. Lila sat on the edge of the couch, hands twisted in her lap. The silence stretched until she finally spoke. "You deserve to know who you're helping." Victor leaned forward in the armchair, giving her space. "I wasn't always like this," she began. "I grew up outside Kalispell. Dad was a lineman, Mom taught 3rd grade. I wanted to be a teacher too. Got my associates, worked as an aide at Hellgate Elementary. Loved it. Riley was born right after I finished my certification classes." Her voice softened at the memory. Her dad, he wasn't bad at first. But the pills got him. Then the anger. When Riley was 2, he put his hands on me. I left the next day. Took nothing but her and the car. She stared at her taped shoes. Thought we'd be okay. I worked double shifts. But he overdosed a year later. Medical bills came anyway. His name was still on some of them. Then the hospital cut 8 positions last spring. Rent went up. Trailer got foreclosed in July. Been bouncing ever since. Victor listened, the weight of her words settling heavy on his chest. "I keep thinking if I just work harder, save smarter, but every door slams." And now, her hand drifted to her stomach, barely rounding yet. "Now there's another one coming. I'm terrified, Victor. But I won't let Riley feel it. She's already lost too much." Riley glanced up from her drawing, a purple wolf howling at a yellow crayon moon, and smiled at her mom before going back to coloring. Victor's throat burned. He cleared it. "I get fear," he said finally. "More than you'd think." Lila looked at him, really looked, for the first time. "My grandfather raised me after my folks died in a small plane crash up near Glacier," he said. "He was old school Butte copper. Tough as the ore he pulled out of the ground. Taught me early, trust no one who needs something from you. I built my company on that. Watched partners steal ideas, executives sell secrets. Even family," he paused, jaw tight. "I don't let people close anymore. My lodge is beautiful but it's empty. Has been for years." He met her eyes. "Until yesterday I thought that was smart. Say, today. I'm not so sure." Room service knocked. Riley raced to the door, chattering with the server like they were old friends. They ate on the balcony, watching kayakers brave the cold river below. Riley fell asleep mid-bite of nugget, curled on the couch with her new parka as a blanket. Lila covered her gently, then came back to the table. She pulled out her phone, hesitant. "There's one more receipt I didn't show you this morning." Victor's stomach dropped. "Here it comes," the big ask, the hidden agenda. She opened the banking app and turned the screen toward him. A $200 wire transfer, to a woman named Marissa Hartley in Kalispell. Memo line, "For your next treatment. Love you always." "My sister," Lila said quietly. "Breast cancer. Stage 3. No insurance after her husband lost his logging job. She's got 2 teenagers. That copay was due yesterday. I couldn't let her miss it." Victor stared at the confirmation. $200 that could have bought Lila a week in this hotel, hot meals, new clothes, a deposit on an apartment. Instead, she sent it 3 hours north to keep her sister fighting. He set the phone down carefully, hands not quite steady. "You could have used that for yourself," he said. "For Riley. For the baby." Lila shrugged, eyes wet. "Family's family. If I've got a chance to help, even once, I take it." Victor stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the river he'd fished 1,000 times alone. The mountains stood unchanged, but everything else felt different. He turned back to her. "You're not going back to the library tomorrow. Or any day after." Lila's breath caught. "I'm renting you a place," he continued. "A bungalow in the Rattlesnake, quiet, safe, good schools. Furnished. You'll have prenatal care at Community Medical, best OB in town. Riley starts kindergarten next week. I'll handle enrollment. And when you're ready, there's a teaching position waiting at Sentinel High. Friend of mine on the board. Tears spilled down Lila's cheeks. Victor, I can't pay you back. Not ever. You already did, he said, voice rough. You reminded me people can be good. Really good. Even when the world gives them every reason not to. He crossed the room, knelt beside Riley's sleeping form, and tucked the parka tighter around her. Then he looked up at Lila. You're not alone anymore. Outside, the clouds finally broke, sunlight spilling gold across the river. Inside the suite, something new took root, fragile, unexpected, but real. Trust. Winter turned to spring in Missoula, the way it always does. Slow at first, with stubborn snow lingering in the shadows of the Bitterroot Mountains, then suddenly exploding into green. The rattlesnake bungalow Victor had rented became a real home. Fresh paint on the walls, a small garden plot out back where Lila planted tomatoes and herbs, Riley's drawings taped to the fridge like medals. Lila's belly rounded under loose sweaters as the months rolled on. She aced her recertification, landed a full-time teaching gig at Sentinel High, freshman English and a creative writing elective. The kids loved her. She had a way of making Shakespeare feel like gossip and poetry feel like breathing. Prenatal appointments became routine, the ultrasound photos pinned above Riley's bed like promises kept. Riley blossomed in kindergarten. Her wolf drawings turned into stories she read aloud to the class. She made friends who came over for playdates, shrieking through the yard while Lila watched from the porch, hand resting on her growing bump, a quiet smile on her face that hadn't been there 6 months earlier. And Victor? Victor became a fixture. He showed up on Saturdays with groceries and a new board game, or on weekdays with takeout from the notorious PIG barbecue joint because Lila craved their smoked brisket something fierce. Riley started calling him Uncle Vic one afternoon while they built a birdhouse together, and the name stuck. He didn't correct her. He liked the way it sounded. He funded things quietly, new books for Lila's classroom, art supplies for Riley's school, an expansion of the community garden Lila had supported with that $300 donation. When the Missoula Humane Society broke ground on a crisis pet boarding wing, Victor wrote the check and put Lila's name on the plaque as the inspiration. She cried when she saw it. One crisp May evening, after a barbecue in the bungalow's backyard, steaks on the grill, Riley chasing fireflies as dusk settled, Lila found Victor on the porch swing, staring at the mountains turning purple in the sunset. She sat beside him, handed him a small gift box wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it." Inside was a single pharmacy receipt, the one she'd kept hidden all these months, and a printed report from a consumer DNA kit. Victor's brow furrowed as he unfolded the papers. The receipt showed the kit purchased that first wild morning, tucked between the children's vitamins and prenatal ones. The report showed genetic matches. He scanned the page, heart thudding harder with every line. Riley's paternal lineage, through her deadbeat father, traced back to old Montana mining families. Specifically, a branch that intersected with Harlan Langston's cousins in the early 1900s. Distant but undeniable. A shared great-great-grandfather who'd prospected silver near Phillipsburg. Victor looked up, stunned. "You knew?" "Not at first," Lila said softly. "I bought the kit on impulse that day, thought maybe someday Riley would want to know where she came from. When the results came back last month, I recognized the Langston name from the news. From you." Riley's biological father had carried Harlan Langston's blood, diluted, hidden by generations and bad choices, but real. Victor stared at the little girl now asleep on the living room couch, thumb in mouth, dreaming under the quilt Lila had sewn from old t-shirts. "She's family," he whispered. "Distant cousin," Lila confirmed. "But family all the same." Victor's eyes filled. He'd spent his life guarding an empire built on his grandfather's legacy, convinced he was the last real Langston standing. Now, in this modest bungalow, he'd found the next branch, growing wild and beautiful despite every storm. He laughed once, shaky and wet. "All this time I thought I was helping strangers. Turns out I was helping my own blood." Lila smiled, tears in her own eyes. "Maybe that's why you stopped that day in the library." Before he could answer, Riley's voice piped up from the doorway, sleepy but curious. "Mama, why's Uncle Vic crying again?" Lila pulled her onto the swing between them. "Because he's happy, baby." Riley considered this, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small bundle of bright yarn and plastic knitting needles. the craft store purchase Victor hadn't understood yet. "I made something," she announced proudly. She held up a lopsided red scarf, uneven stitches and all. "It's for the people by the river," she said. "The ones with tents. Mama said they get cold at night. I want to give 'em warm necks." Victor took the scarf gently, running his thumb over the clumsy knots. A 5-year-old's idea, bought with billionaire money, turned into real warmth for strangers shivering in the same town that had once turned Lila away. He looked at Riley, then at Lila's rounded belly where new life kicked, then at the DNA report still in his lap. Everything connected. Roots deeper than he'd ever imagined. Seeds planted in kindness, growing wild and strong. Victor wrapped the little scarf around his own neck, too short, too bright, perfect, and pulled Riley into a hug. "Then we'll deliver it together," he said, voice thick. "All of us." Under the vast Montana sky turning starlit and endless, 3 lives, now undeniably tied by blood, choice and grace, settled into the swing, rocking gently as fireflies danced. The empire could wait. Family was finally home. 2 years flew by in the way Montana seasons do, fierce and beautiful, unforgiving and generous all at once. The Langston Legacy Fund Gala filled the historic Wilma Theater in downtown Missoula on a crisp June evening. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above velvet seats packed with philanthropists, politicians, local business owners, and families from every corner of rural Montana. Banners lined the walls. Photos of new homes built, classrooms supplied, prenatal clinics funded, community gardens blooming. All of it traced back to one rainy afternoon in a public library. Victor stood backstage in a tailored charcoal suit, tugging at his collar. Public speaking had never bothered him before. Boardrooms full of sharks were easy compared to this. Tonight felt different. Tonight was personal. He peeked through the curtain. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. And there, front row center, sat the reason for all of it. Lila, glowing in a simple teal dress that matched the Clark Fork at sunset, held 8-month-old Theo on her lap, the baby gurgling happily in a tiny tuxedo onesie Riley had picked out. Riley, now 7 and missing her 2 front teeth, sat beside her mom in a sundress covered in embroidered wools, legs swinging, clutching the worn dream catcher she'd made for Victor years ago. He still kept it on his rearview mirror. The MC, a local news anchor, introduced him with praise that made Victor's cheeks burn. He walked on stage to warm applause, microphone heavy in his hand. "I spent most of my life believing trust was a liability," he began, voice steady but thick. "I built walls higher than any mine shaft my grandfather ever dug. I thought kindness was a weakness that got exploited. I was wrong." The room quieted. 2 years ago, I met a woman and her little girl who proved me wrong in the most beautiful way possible. They didn't ask for anything. They didn't take everything. They gave, when they had nothing. He paused, eyes finding Lila's in the front row. She smiled, tears already shining. Tonight, the Langston Legacy Fund is officially launching with $100 million committed to rural Montana mothers. Housing grants, medical debt relief, education pathways, childcare, mental health support, even programs to help families keep their pets through hard times. Because no one should have to choose between food on the table and the dog who kept their kids smiling. Applause swelled. Victor continued, listing partnerships with tribal health programs on the Flathead Reservation, teaching fellowships across the state, community gardens in every county that wanted one. He wrapped up to a standing ovation, but before he could step away, Lila stood, Theo balanced on her hip, and started walking toward the stage steps. The crowd hushed, curious. Victor froze as she climbed up, Riley trailing behind holding her mom's hand. Lila took the second microphone from the MC without a word, turned to the audience and spoke, clear, strong, unscripted. "I was homeless when Victor Langston walked into that library," she said simply. "Sleeping in shelters when we were lucky, on floors when we weren't. Pregnant with Theo and terrified I couldn't protect my daughter from the cold." A few gasps rippled through the room. Not everyone knew the full story. "He gave me his credit card for one day. Told me there were no limits. Most people would have run to a hotel, bought new clothes, stocked a fridge, maybe even disappeared." She smiled through tears. "I bought boots for Riley so her feet wouldn't freeze. Books so she could keep dreaming. Vitamins for the baby I was carrying. And then," she glanced at Victor, "I bought yarn so Riley could knit scarves for people colder than we were. Money for my sister's cancer treatment. A donation to help families keep their pets. And $300 for a community garden program right here in Missoula, because someone taught me once that hope gets planted, one seed at a time. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. I never booked a hotel room, Lila said, voice breaking now. Not even for one night. Because other people needed it more. She turned fully to Victor. This man didn't just give us a card. He gave us a future. He saw us when the rest of the world walked past. And because he did, because he chose to trust when every voice in his life told him not to, hundreds of Montana families will get the same chance. Theo reached out a chubby hand toward Victor, cooing. Lila stepped closer, tears streaming freely. Victor Langston didn't save us, she finished, voice trembling with gratitude. He showed us the world could still be kind. And then he built a legacy to prove it. The theater erupted, standing ovation, cheers, whistles, tears, and more eyes than Victor could count. He couldn't move at first. Then Riley ran to him, arms wide. He scooped her up, and Lila stepped into his embrace. Theo squished happily between them as the three of them, stood together on stage. Victor held them tight, tears falling unchecked onto Lila's shoulder. His grandfather had been wrong about everything that mattered. Trust wasn't a liability. It was the richest vein he'd ever struck. As the applause thundered on and cameras flashed, Victor whispered into Lila's hair the words he'd never said out loud before. Thank you for giving me my family back. Outside, under the vast Montana sky painted rose and gold, the ripples from one impulsive act in a rainy library kept spreading, feeding gardens, warming homes, healing hearts. One seed at a time. And somewhere in the crowd, a little girl in a wolf dress clutched her mother's hand and smiled, knowing she'd helped plant them all. Thanks for listening to this story, folks. If it touched you even half as much as it touched me telling it, hit that like button, drop a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe, we've got more real-life miracles coming. Because out there in this big, wild world, kindness is still the most powerful thing we've got. See you in the next one. What will you rate this story from 0 to 10? And what part of the world are you watching from? Comment your country below. Let's build a global community rooted in kindness and second chances. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends. Your support brings us closer to our 1K subscriber milestone and inspires us to keep creating more emotional stories of resilience, healing, and Black excellence. Thank you for being part of our journey. Your presence matters more than you know. Hope to see you again.